Alright, welcome to Manga 101. Now, just check. Okay, today's topic is going to be about scaling, font size, font type, your bubbles, word bubbles that is, also the thickness of your lines. That is pretty much what we're going to go for right now. Alright, with manga, most people you'll see it's mainly geared towards teaching people on the fine points of drawing and proportion and stuff like that. Yes, that's all important, but what is highly underestimated is actually the font, and also the size and the scaling and thickness of your lines and stuff, because that usually gets overlooked. It's actually one of the most difficult to teach people, because most of it is actually due to trial and error. Because most of what I will teach you, and I teach everybody about drawing, like if you're going to draw, always draw at a comfortable size. But if you're going to do, let's say, graphic novels, and you want it from comic book size to something smaller, I always suggest that you do is draw it big and then scale it down using your computer and such. Although that's kind of difficult, for some people to comprehend what is it going to look like when I scale it down. Would it really be the same? Not always, because what is very good on the original drawing, your lines, you will lose it and it will degrade as you photocopy it, and also when you shrink down things. Lines that are, if they're too thin, they will literally disappear. Alright, for fonts, here's the problem. Some people make them legible enough to see it in the original drawing. When it gets scaled down, on the other hand, a lot of times it becomes too blurred out. Even like with professional mangas in Japanese, that's a problem. Although you can't really tell too much, but there's a character that, from a normal reading level, of distance, it just looks like a black box. Well, the problem is, the original size, it was good when it was published. When this was published, it was published in a magazine form. But when they scale it down, they lose clarity. That's what you have to always look out for. Alright, font types. Well, I always tell people to mix up your fonts. Have different types of fonts for different expressions of emotions. But the easiest is just to a standard typeface, as it were. Whatever font that you particularly like. And it's usually, let's say if you're going to be angry, make the font darker, a little bit bigger, have expressive lines, maybe have it italic, send in an italic form, so you can specify like certain words that you want to emphasize, or that is more highly raised in vocal terms, is expressed in that way. Or even adding lines underneath to determine that is the word that you are stating the most, having the most verbal impact on. Alright, now word bubbles, as it were. You're probably wondering, should I do this on my original or do this after, during the editing process? Well, sometimes it is good to have it on the original so you do it all at once. Other times it might actually hinder you. It's most likely the best choice for anybody is to do that on your computer and edit it. And a lot of times I suggest, like if you're going to do, let's say, to scale it down to manga form, to have it printed like a graphic novel, smaller size, or even a smaller size than this to this size, I suggest actually doing that at the very end. When you scale it down in the computer, your image, and it looks all right, then you do is, make your word bubbles, as it were. Alright. And then put your text in there that fits it, just so it's ready for publishing or printing, as it were. Alright. Some people have the problem of determining which kind of word bubbles are for which purposes. What should I use? Well, in the English world, we basically use as a standard oval as a word bubble, or a rectangle or a square that's rounded, to make it more of an actual bubble or something, or a circle, Alright. The tail is always pointed towards the speaker. Alright, just to make sure on that. And if you're wondering, well, should the tail be different depending on who's speaking? Not always. Sometimes you might want it to have it the same, but if the noise or auditorial sounding is coming from, let's say, something mechanical like a TV set, a radio, a car, or something that is, let's say, non-human, as it were, non-living entity, as it were, a machine of some sort, or, then you specify, just having the tail more, like a lightning bolt, the classic lightning bolt shape, and you always point it at the object. That just tells that the vocalizations is coming from a mechanical source. Alright, like, for some people who want to know what the different types of word bubbles that the Japanese use. Well, they kind of use like our standard bubbles. Like I said, here's a standard American bubble, but a lot of times they use their text in a vertical format instead of horizontal. But it's pretty much the same, okay? And also, like, if the person's dreaming or thinking, usually you'll have little circles that lead up to the main thought bubble. That determines that this is a dream or it is what they are thinking. They are not vocalizing this bit of text, okay? So don't worry about it. Sometimes it's just, you have word bubble with just question marks or exclamations. Sometimes that just gives you the sense of them saying, huh, or what, or whatever, without actually needing to write anything. It gives the person to actually add the voice to, or the sounding of what they want them to say. It also gives the concept of what they are thinking without them actually saying anything. It's not like they're saying question mark, exclamation mark. They're not really saying that. But it's kind of funny if you think they are. But who knows, maybe you want them to actually say that. Alright, now some people wondering, okay, why are some bubbles are angular like this? Okay, bubbles that are like that, even if they're not full sections, angular bubbles like this determines of anger or excitement or anything that's used of language that is shouting, something is shouting. Alright, you could also do is have your bubbles more organic, like blob like. It doesn't have to be a perfect thing. It's okay. And then there's those that you've seen it, where the bubbles, as it were, it's all in boxes. Like, okay. Well, actually, when it's in a box form like this, and it's a pretty standard font, as it were, like how it is here, well, it's actually determining that it is a narrative, okay? That is all. If you understand movies and you know what a narration is, okay, it's pretty simple. And then you'll find is like loose text, floating around. A lot of times that is what the artist is thinking, or adding words that doesn't really need to be stated. Some of it is like kind of inside jokes, but it's actually quite fun. And a lot of it, the floating text, is nothing more than sound effects. You'll see that in all forms of comic books. And then you could have is like thoughts or narratizations, like how this is just floating above, no box or anything. It doesn't mean that you have to have as a box for your text. Usually the boxes and bubbles, as it were, is to contain the information needed. Say, this person is saying this, and this is how they're expressing it. While, like, when it's loose, and sometimes if you have too many speakers, it loses sight. Okay, of course, narratives don't have to always be in boxes. Like here, you'll have narrativization, that it's just text that is, vertical in this format, you see, sorry, but there's no box. But yet, the box is kind of implied. But still, it's a narrative, think of it as like credits or something like that, you know how text just is floating, even at the beginning or the ending of a TV show or movies and stuff. It's just there. Sometimes it's narratizations or whatever. That's still kind of the same thing. It's mainly used as a narrative. Sometimes it's the main character that's the narrator of this, what they're thinking. They have no boxes. A lot of times it's just for visual effect. It makes it look cleaner instead of having box and box and box. When there's too much stuff going on, hinders. Other times, you want to maybe do as a graphic design, such as this. Have your word bubbles. It all works. Sometimes narratizations will be in different shapes. It doesn't have to be in boxes. Sometimes it's in designs like that. That's a narrativization, because first of all, it's just text, but nothing's pointing to the speaker. And you have to do is realize that a lot of times it's a narrative, and it's also, they are the narrator in their own head. Alright. Now, thickness of lines, like I said, sometimes you will have your lines too thin or too thick. Yeah, they end up bleeding out, as it were. They fade away when you scale it down. Just make sure that you draw at a comfortable size, and it gets scaled down to whatever size you're doing, that it looks clean and professional. You always want things to look professional as possible. Alright, well, that's pretty much it for right now. But if you like this, just like, add, or whatever. I don't really care what you do, but I hope this helped you in some way. See you next time. Ciao.